2%, finally down to 2%. Honda, why won't you just die? Ah. Okay, come on baby. Just give me 200 or 300 meters, that's all I'm asking for. Well, folks, what do we have here today? Got a range test of the Honda E. Will this car actually hit its WLTP figure? But in circumstances that it was designed for. It's a city EV. There's no point in putting this thing onto a motorway at 140 kilometers an hour and then saying that the range is crap. So we've got it charged up to 100%. With the cameras hooked up. Let's get out on the road, go over the ground rules and let you know where we're going today. So, let's go over some facts and figures just before we get going. We're in the Honda E. It's a 35 kilowatt hour battery, 28.5 of which is usable. It's got a WLTP rating of 220 kilometers. Now we all know, especially as EV drivers, that the WLTP figure is a little bit optimistic. But the Honda E was designed for an urban environment. The very concept car itself was called the Urban EV. So the range test that we're doing today is not just barreling down a motorway and then saying it falls short by 30% and the range is crap. We want to test it out in the conditions that it was built for. So the trip that we have is just over 200 kilometers, about 205, something like that. So it's just under the WLTP figure. I'm, pretty confident that we're going to make it back home, but we'll see how it goes. If we're doing well, we might do an extra loop of the block or something like that. So we're charged up to 100%. We've got the cameras on. I think that it could be time just to hit the road, and we'll go over some of the ground rules while we're on the way. So I'll quickly go over the journey today. What we are doing is we're setting out from Drogheda, a town about 50 kilometers north of Dublin, the capital of Ireland, and we are heading down into Dublin. We're going to go through the city and up into the Wicklow Mountains on the other side. It's going to take us, about 100, 110 kilometers to get where we're going, and then it's back down the mountains through the city and out to where I live in Drogheda again. So just over 200 kilometers in total, and we're trying to beat that WLTP figure. But let's get some of the ground rules out of the way as well. We're not just going to tuck in behind some big lorry at 80 kilometers an hour on the motorway. We're going to just tip along as we would normally, with one exception, which is on the motorway passages. We're going to be limiting the car to 100 kilometers an hour. One of the things I really like about this car is how it feels on the motorway. Now I know it's not designed for that. It was the urban EV, it's for city driving, but it's surprising how planted it feels on the motorway and how comfortable it is to drive. Quick update, because we've just come off the motorway. We've done 38 kilometers using up 18% of the battery, but the average consumption has been just under 15 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So at this rate, we're not going to make it. But having said that, I know we've just been on the motorway, so we've been using a much higher than average level amount of juice. So anyway, that's it for now. We'll give you an update again in a while. So just to give you an update on how the trip is going, because we're the other side of Dublin city now, and we have done 55.5 kilometers, an average consumption of 13.9 kilowatt hours for every 100 kilometers we do. Another way of looking at this is we've used 25% of the battery to do just under 56 kilometers now. So I'm not as confident as I was when I sat on my driveway there about an hour ago. But anyway, that gives you an update, and it's a good time to do it because shortly we're going to be heading up into the Wicklow Mountains, and that is just going to absolutely blow the consumption levels. But we'll give you an update when we get up there in the mountains as well. So here we are at the foot of Turlock Hill, and just outside the window, I'll show you now, is the Turlock Hill pumped hydro station. In essence, a gigantic battery. It's got 4 separate 73 megawatt turbines there. It can go from completely unoperational, standstill, to full capacity in 70 seconds. That leads us on just to talk a little bit about the battery in the Honda E. So you've got a 35 kilowatt hour battery, 28.5 of which is usable. And we wanted to get out of the car and film this, but you can see that the weather is absolutely miserable here, which isn't helping our range either. You know, we've done a video about this in the past on the Mazda, just talking about the case for smaller batteries, and we're chasing, you know, gigantic ranges well above 500 kilometers, batteries in excess of 100 kilowatt hours. And you know, a car like this is not built for that motorway journeys. It's not meant to cross countries. It's an urban EV. It's meant to just float around the city, do a few little jobs here and there. But anyway, let's give ourselves an update, because we are up at 473 meters above sea level. Now the drive so far has been 102 kilometers, and we've averaged 15.1 kilowatt hours for every 100 kilometers. So we've done just under half of our journey, but we've used just over half the battery. But as I said, we're at 473 meters above sea level, so you know, we're going to get a little bit of regen on the way back down. So this is definitely worth a little update. We are, you can't really see much, but that is the source of the river Liffey just there, and we are sitting at 527 meters above sea level. But we have company as well. That's what you get when you're driving through the Wicklow Mountains. Flocks of sheep just pop out and get in your way. So we've just come through what's known as the Sally Gap, and it was pretty much the highest point that we're going to be doing on this journey, just above 500 meters. That's a good point just to give an update, because we're, you know, kind of onto the final leg now. So we're sitting at about 500 meters above sea level now, and the battery is on 33%, but we have about 65 kilometers to get home. So the guessometer here says that we've got 65 kilometers of range left. So according to the guessometer, it's touch and go, but what we know is we've been up a mountain pass basically, and we're carrying about 500 meters of elevation, so that'll help us on the way down. And I really wanted to stop at this point as well, because it's only about 15 kilometers into the center of Dublin City, which is at sea level. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of energy we use to get from where we are now at 500 meters above sea level down into Dublin. So we're making our way down from the Dublin mountains. We've got nearly 500 meters of elevation drop over the space of about 15 kilometers, so we actually don't even need a motor. This car would just take itself down under the force of gravity. But we've got a motor of just over 110 kilowatts in the Honda E, and that's turning out just over 150 horsepower. So there's quite a bit of punch to this as well. You're going to get the 0 to 100 kilometer sprint in 8 seconds flat. It's the 62 miles an hour. So look, it's not Model 3 performance fast, not even close, but when you compare this to the average car on the road, and certainly when you compare this to other cars of a similar size on the road, this thing is fast. And as we all know as EV drivers and EV lovers, it's that instant torque and acceleration that you get when you plant your foot. It's just addictive. And when you're driving down mountain roads like this, especially with the one pedal driving, and you're feeling 113 kilowatts of power coming in behind you, and then even regenerating at 40 or 50 when you lean off, it's intoxicating actually. But it's also just how the car feels, how it's planted on the road. You've got independent suspension. All the four wheels are just tucked in the corners. You've got a really low center of gravity, as we get with a lot of electric cars. Just from that battery pack, 35 kilowatt hours in this case, been tucked underneath the floor of the car, and it just feels really planted. The steering is quite nimble as well. It's very, very light to the touch. I mean, I can steer with just one finger on it there. Yeah, this is a nice car. So here we are, just crossing over the River Liffey. So we're back down to sea level. We've dropped about 500 meters over, I think it was 17 kilometers or something like that in the end. And we've gone down to 30% battery, so only used about 2% to cover that distance. The picture's looking a bit more pretty again. When we were up at the top of the mountain there, the average consumption and the guessometer and the predicted range was pretty low, but we knew that would go back up as we went downhill. So we have done 159 kilometers on the trip so far, and we've used 70% of the battery, and that's given us an average consumption of 13 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So it's looking, you know, there's not much doubt that we won't get home all right. But the question now is starting to become, is it going to hit its WLTP figure of 220 kilometers? So we're actually not far off that. I know when we get back on the motorway now, consumption is going to get a bit heavier again, and it's really going to test it. But look, let's see. We'll be back with another update shortly. So I'm on the final stretch home. I'm only about maybe 2 kilometers from my house, and it's downhill even, so we'll be using very little energy, and we still have 5% of the battery remaining, having done 202 kilometers. So no doubt about me making it home, but there's still 5% in the battery, and that could be kind of 10 or 12 kilometers range. But I've never driven this car at length before. I've never driven it down this low battery, so I don't know how it's going to react. I know if it was my own Leaf, I know exactly what I can get out of it, almost down to a couple of 100 meters at this stage, but I'm not going to risk it too much of this car. But let's push it a little bit further and just see how close to that WLTP figure that the car can actually get. Just another little update there. It's dropped down to 4%, and then after a minute or so at that level, a picture of a turtle has come on now, so I presume that's limiting power, although when I give it a bit of welly, that doesn't really happen. But we've still got 4% left, and we are up to 207 kilometers. So I'm going to keep going a little bit more, because it doesn't look like, once, I know with my Leaf anyway, once it goes below 5%, it won't even tell you what percentage it's on. You're on fumes at that stage. This seems to go down in increments of 1, so we'll push it a little bit further and see what happens. 2%, finally down to 2%. Honda, why won't you just die? It just keeps on going. We're up above 210 now, 212 kilometers done. It's only just gone to 2%. It seems to be holding on to more charge than it's indicating at this level. I've been going up and down the main road close to my house now for a while, and it's just not dropping like it should be. So I'm going down to the end of this road and I'm turning back and I'm going home. I'm calling it quits at that stage. Honda. It's good, but just, I want to go home. I'm hungry. Okay, come on, baby. Just give me 200 or 300 meters. That's all I'm asking for. Playing this one a little bit closer than I wanted to. So we're back home in the Honda E in my driveway now, and just as I'm pulling into the driveway, she had 0%, so the car is pretty much out. I mean, maybe it would limp for another couple of kilometers, but that's pretty much it. We did 214.6 kilometers, averaging 12.9 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, so decent efficiency. It didn't quite hit the WLTP of 220 kilometers. Could it have done that? Yeah, if we weren't on the motorway. If it was all city driving on country roads, you know, the 40 miles per hour or kind of 60-70 kilometers per hour speeds, then it probably would have hit the WLTP. If you are really, really careful with this and you're driving around the city in summertime, would you get 230, 240 out of it? I think you probably would at a push. You know, it's been an absolutely wonderful car, but I think it's time now just to switch her off and go get the cables from the boot and plug it in. As you can tell, just using what's called the granny cable today. Pin socket.
The Honda E was a pleasure to drive for the week I had it. I covered around 500 kilometers in that time and thoroughly enjoyed every moment. Sure, it has its downsides, the boot is minuscule and the range is very small for the significant amount of money you have to spend. But that's not what this car is about. It's about having fun, parking easily, running about town, or a fun drive through the countryside on the weekend. And in the chase for bigger batteries and greater range, sometimes we lose sight of what we actually need and want in nearly every situation.